cigarette you ever had?
Yeah.
2 years?
Mm-hmm.
How old were you? Or where was it?
I was walking over a bridge in Florida. I was about 17.
Do you remember what it was? What brand it was?
Yeah, it was Tarryton, something like that. Yeah. Fuck, they still make that?
Do they? Those are like cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I met some chick that was smoking, and I thought, oh, I'll smoke them too, you know. I was boxing for several years, and then I got hurt, and supposed to take like a year off. I had a bad concussion, and just getting ready to turn professional, and it was what I was going to do with my life, and yeah, and so I took some time off, and then got into the acting just because I couldn't do what I, was planning on doing. It was kind of hard to get in, so there wasn't a lot of people there. They only took like 3 or 4 people out of like a couple of thousand every year, So, I mean, when I got in, Pacino was there, Harvey Keitel, Chris Walken. That was about it. You were pretty terrified when you got up to work in front of him, he was like fucking God. Yeah. But so you saw like, I don't think there was any more than 100 people there at a time, or less than 100, maybe 60 people in the room, I think it was Fridays, I believe.
That is a little intimate to me. It sounds like...
Well, yeah, especially when there was only three people in the room that worked. The rest of the people never worked. They just did scenes for the rest of their life. So you looked around, you saw Harvey Keitel, Chris Walken, and Al Pacino, and the rest of the people you never heard from. I think I was bouncing in a transvestite nightclub, and I had taken the afternoon off to go meet this casting lady, right? And there was some dialogue, and I read the stuff for her, and she asked me to come in, I think, again. And it was pretty simple. And so I came, she hired me. And it was the first job I had. I couldn't say shit. All I remember is I had a scene with Chris Walken, and he came, they said action, and I saw Chris, and I went, oh my God, I'm in a movie with Chris Walken, and I couldn't say my lines. I went behind the hut and started crying because he hit me with his hat, called me a dumb son of a bitch. This wrangler, this cowboy who was there, came over and said, you know why Michael did that? And I said, no. He said, because he likes you so much. And, I guess, gee.
What was Cimino like in those days?
He was great. He was incredible. He was a ball of fire. I never saw anything like him. I mean, he reminded you of like a great football coach or something, with all the strategy he had and the passion. And when Michael is on, there's nobody that can touch him really. I mean, he's just so well prepared and enthusiastic, and he had so much energy, and it's pretty electric on the set. He screams and yells, but he screams and yells for a purpose. He's a perfectionist, and some people don't like that kind of shit. But coming from an athletic background, I enjoyed the fact that he pushes you to the limit. I understood what he was doing. A lot of people can't work like that, but and I guess I didn't that day. But I like working with Michael very much. I mean, we didn't even have a script. He took it from a book, and he did all this crazy. I mean, it wasn't crazy. It was sort of interesting, improvisational type of work. He'd have Stuart Copeland there playing music to get an idea of the rhythm of the piece and whatever that is, the rhythm. But and then he'd sit on his typewriter and write. It was a different way of working. I went with the flow, and I don't think it would have been so interesting if it was some other stiff, but it was Francis Coppola, and it was the way he was motivating himself to get interested in doing the piece. So it was a good experience because it was Francis, and he has such different kind of ideas and different way of working that it made it interesting for me to just not know what the hell I was doing or what he was doing, And then I go, oh, okay. And yeah, I liked working with him. Papa Greenwich Village was a lot of fun because of working with Eric Roberts. Eric was quite an interesting character, to say the least. Eric's just a very talented actor. There's a whole bunch of guys that are movie stars today. Like I've said this before, they can't hold Eric's goddamn jockstrap, But for other reasons, Eric's doing other stuff, So what makes that? We're talking about politics, we're talking about luck, we're talking about a whole bunch of other bullshit that has nothing to do with acting, I mean, Eric he's a tremendous actor. I mean, you see him in Runaway Train, Star 80 and stuff like that. Whatever happened to him where, he's on the bench these days is a goddamn shame. Because there's, a lot of these, guys that are running around now making $20 million a movie can't do, shit next to him. It was written for an older person, and that was the only difficulty we had, was trying to make the guy like 10 or 15 years older, He had done like about a year and a half's worth of research on all the material with the Chinese, so he really knew what he was doing. I mean, so much shit went down on Heaven's Gate, because of how much it cost at the time, and then UA folding and whatever happened there. He was, I think, for the rest of his career, judged on that. Then the book came out, maybe all that's hit him now. I don't know, But when Michael's, like I say, when Michael's on and he's on the floor and he's sort of left alone, he's nobody could touch him. Adrian's very bold, very intelligent. That's what makes it exciting working with directors that know more than you do, because they're prepared. That's the other thing, is they're prepared. They make your job easier. Also, if you respect the director, you can give them you'll give them a lot more. And so, Adrian is somebody that I was very excited working with, who I'd like to work with again someday. When I'm in London, I see Nick. Yeah, I like Nick Rourke a lot. Nick is pretty out there, kind of like, he's just, you just have a lot of fun on a Nick Rourke movie. And Nick, if he doesn't like your interpretation, he'll give you a line reading. He'll tell you exactly how to say it. He's not shy that way. Some people objected to that, and I thought, oh, okay. I mean, I actually saw him giving people line readings, how to say their lines, and they got all bent out of shape, and I just chuckled and thought, if you can't do it, listen to Nick, I was mainly just riding motorcycles and not paying too much attention to my career. And I think I was getting ready to lose my house, and I remember this job came out of the blue, and I thought, oh, I don't have to lose my house now, so that's how it came about. It was about the time that I was just getting ready to pack it in with the acting, I think, when Angel Heart came around. I think Parker caught me at a bad time.
What do you mean?
Well, I just had lost interest really in acting about that time. I remember meeting Parker in New York for the job, and he was yelling at me before I even started working, telling me, "You're gonna behave, and you're gonna be on time, and you're." I'm thinking, God, this guy must have did his homework. And I said, yeah, yes. All I kept thinking about is, I can't fuck this up. I got to save my house. And when I did read the material, I thought it was interesting. I think once again I was more attracted to working with Parker than I was actually with the material itself. I guess when I did Barfly, I didn't even know who Bukowski was, you know. And as I kept getting hammered about doing it, I read a couple of his books, which I enjoyed reading them. I met him. He was okay for a drunk. The director was an asshole. Schroeder, he was a prick. How do you explain what a prick is? He wasn't, just a prick, self-centered prick.
No, but what did you really think of it?
I thought he was a prick. I liked working with Faye Dunaway. That was fun, and the dialogue was interesting. The character was, it was what it was. It was almost time to do something else. I just started doing other things with my life at the time that I enjoyed more, I think, than going to work. I think by the time I did Johnny Hampson, acting became a boring job. It became laborious. It was very unfulfilling. It was just not what I had any bit of respect for doing. It just all, and I don't even know if it was the acting itself. Maybe it was just where my head was at. I was only going to have one fight. It was only going to take 6 months, but one fight turned into 11. I just enjoyed the physicality of it. You get past a certain stage where you even feel the pain as far as getting punched. If you go into another mode, you almost are desensitized to it. As the damage is accumulating, you get more desensitized in a way, because most of the injuries, let's say, that I had happened in the gym. They didn't really happen in the fights, because you don't feel a lot in the gym. You're used to it. I mean, the average Joe wouldn't be used to it, but you get used to it after a while. It just becomes a way of life. It becomes your thing. And it got to the point where I had 11 fights, and finally I had gone in and taken neurological, and the doctors told me I had to stop. If the doctors told me I didn't have to stop, it probably may have went on another year or two. You're the last one to realize that your balance is off, or you can't remember what you did last night or the night before, so you just go, oh, fuck it. But you start. There's things that start to happen that you don't really deal with. Somebody will say something to you, and like 2 minutes ago, you can't remember it, but you can remember stuff from 20 years ago, but not 2 minutes ago. And you figure, oh, hell, it's not important. But it depends on when you get out, because with the boxing, there's that line that you're standing on. And when you take a step to the left, let's say, there's no coming back, So the doctors would say, this, that, and the other, and we don't know if it's going to be one punch or 1,000 more punches, but you're right on the line. And then you got to get out of the game. But the boxing was a priority. There's a couple directors now that had wanted me for movies at that period of time, but they had heard that I wasn't acting anymore, which was sort of the way it was, really. So I guess I put myself on the shelf, and people realized, well, he's doing. And then I became. And I did this one small film, and I think it started on a Monday, and I was in Germany fighting on a Friday, and so after they found that out, I wasn't insurable for a while. What do they call? Yeah, insurable. Not bankable, insurable. I couldn't get an insurance bond like So even after I quit boxing, I still had insurance problems because of the boxing. I couldn't get bonded,
Wow.
is what it was.
What was the experience like for you?
It was really great. I loved working with Terry. I mean, the 2 days that I was there, it was just rambling monologues and stuff, and it was just real interesting experience working with him. You know, he's really something else. He's somebody who I had wanted to meet and work with because, you know, he makes a movie every 20 years. And, you know, as it'll be, you know, my stuff didn't make it to the picture. Well, Buscemi called me up and he says, "Hey, you want to be in the movie?" And I said, "Yeah, why not, you know? I want you to play a transvestite." And I said, "Yeah, right." You know, I thought he was kidding me. I thought he got the role confused with somebody else, you know. And I said, "No, are you serious?" He says, "Yeah." And then I still thought he was teasing me or kidding. And he sent me the sides, and I read it, and I went, you want me to do this, or you want somebody else to do it?" And he said, "No, I want you to do it." And I said, wow. And then I thought, wow, Steve's must have a reason he wants me to do that role. I had gotten on the airplane in character, and
What, in drag?
yeah, and I'll never do that again. I figured because I was only working one day, and so I thought, well, you know what? I don't have a lot of time to prepare. I had spent about 10 days looking for the outfits I was going to wear for this one day of work. And so I was real excited about all the shit that I had accumulated in all these stores. And then I wanted to, what do you call it? I didn't want to break the ice on the set with walking into character on the set and finding myself through the period when the little red light was ticking on the camera. So I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do it before I get there on the plane with the people in the air. So it was really hard because when I had all this shit on and the makeup and everything, and I was getting my ticket, I had big long fingernails and I couldn't get my ticket out of my pocket to hand to the ticket lady. You know, it took me. And then I didn't have my front teeth in. And so this little kid was looking at me, and he was holding his mother's leg, and I smiled. And the kid grabbed his mother's leg and started crying, and I realized I must look pretty scary. And then I was sitting on the plane, and I started getting really nervous because people would look over, and started to break out in hives because I was just edgy. And then the lady came up the aisle going, "Sir, would you like a coffee? Sir, would you like a water?" And when the lady got to me, she says, "Can I get you anything?" She didn't say sir or ma'am or miss. And then so by the time I walked on the set and saw Steve, I said, "Hey, how you doing?" You know, and he looked at me really weird. And he went, "Huh." And I go, "What's up, Stevie?" And he looked and he said, I said, "It's me." And he went, "Jesus Christ." So I thought, okay, I broke the ice. Now I can do this character. And so we had fun. And I had fun doing that. I mean, I wouldn't do it again. But this was before 9/11, so I got away with it, you know. Robert had already cast the whole movie. He told me, he said, "I've already written this script, and I don't know what to do now because I want you in the movie." And so what he did was he basically just rewrote a character from meeting me and her. He was great to work with. I had a lot of fun. He's also a great writer. So like, he had basically blocked out some stuff where he was going to introduce my character. And then he says, "Well, I don't have any dialogue for you today, but I'm going to write you a scene during lunch." And so I'd be amazed. He'd go over during lunch. You know, most of the times you get a rewrite from some writers and you get it back 2 weeks later and it's the same shit, or it's worse. But Robert would take, you know, 45 to 70 minutes to write something during the lunch, and it would be really interesting stuff. And he did that, you know, in 4 or 5 different days. And his enthusiasm, him being so excited about making his movies, and he just lives for it. It rubs off on everybody. It rubbed off on me. Yeah, I'd say don't do it like I did it.
Why would you say that, though?
I think I just had a very naive impression of how I thought it was going to be and what it was about and the level that was acceptable. That's you know, they settled for a lot of mediocrity, and that wasn't where I was at. I understand what it is now, and it's got very little to do with acting. And if you think it has a lot to do with acting, then I don't know.
And when you say it, you mean just...
The business, the success of your level of success in the business, you know, it's very political.